My name is Miles Rapoport. I am the Senior Practice Fellow in American Democracy at the Ash Center for Democratic Governance and Innovation at the Harvard Kennedy School. So I have been working on these democracy issues for almost 40 years, and I am delighted to have been able to co-author a book with the great journalist E.J. Dionne called 100% Democracy, The Case for Universal Voting. Well, in its simplest terms, universal voting is the requirement that every citizen not only has a right to vote, but a responsibility to vote. We do this for jury duty, where everyone serves on a jury, and the idea is that voting in the same way should be both a right of a citizen and also a responsibility of citizenship. In Australia, they actually adopted universal voting in 1924, so they have been using it successfully for almost 100 years. And the way it works is that every citizen is required to vote. If they don't vote, they get a letter in the mail asking for the reason that they vote. Almost every reason is accepted, but if you absolutely have no reason to vote, then you get a fine of about $15, the equivalent of a parking ticket. I think there are four major benefits that we would see almost immediately if universal voting were adopted. First, we would immediately see a tremendous rise in political participation and voting turnout. Secondly, I think the institutions of our civil society would change in the direction of helping people to fulfill their obligations. So schools and civic education, employers giving time off for the right to vote, media platforms making sure that people understood how to vote. All those things I think would shift so that people could fulfill their responsibilities. Third, I think campaigns would change as well. Right now we have the situation where campaigns mainly rely on turning out their own voters and, in the worst case scenarios, depressing the votes of their opponents. Under universal voting, everyone is voting and everyone is listening. And so what campaigns will need to do is actually persuade everyone in the voting electorate that their ideas are better. And I think that will make a much healthier level of campaigning. And fourth, individual citizens would actually also change their behavior as well. The studies have shown, where it's been used, that individual citizens, when they are required to vote, make more effort to educate themselves on the issues, to make sure they know how and where to vote, and to fulfill their responsibilities. In terms of universal voting, passing constitutional muster, in the working group, we had several noted legal scholars who dug deeply into this issue, and we're convinced that universal voting will be constitutional as long as there is not compelled speech to vote for a single candidate or even for a ballot initiative. As long as they're an option for none of the above, and as long as it is possible to submit blank ballots, we don't think there's a constitutional problem, and we think it will hold up in the courts. In terms of the objections to universal voting, there are really two main threads that we hear. The first is the libertarian argument that anything but the minimum of government compulsion is objectionable. And the truth is, there are many arenas of our lives where there are things that we're required to do, from paying taxes to getting our kids educated to wearing masks or getting vaccines in some cases. The other objection is that in poor communities, even a small fine can be a real burden for families. So what we tried to do is design a very light touch, low fine enforcement system that hopefully is as manageable as possible. And we believe that the benefits of universal voting will certainly outweigh the obstacles that people may face in complying with it. In 100% Democracy, we lay out a path towards universal voting that has a number of elements. One is to get the idea out into the public domain, getting people writing about it, talking about it, debating it, criticizing it, and just making it one of the ideas that is discussed as we think about our democracy. Second, we want organizations that are working with people in the field and in communities to adopt support for universal voting as part of their agenda for democracy. What we hope is that states and municipalities will adopt reforms that really encourage people to vote, lower the barriers for them to do so, and that will make possible the idea of making voting truly universal, and we think that would be a really great step forward.